The coffee maker gurgles softly in the corner, its aroma mingling with the faint hum of early morning traffic outside the window. Sophia Williams stood in the kitchen of her modest one-bedroom apartment on the north side of Chicago. Her long brown hair was tied into a lazy bun. She wore no makeup, no jewelry, just a simple gray hoodie, the cuffs worn and soft from years of use, and a pair of yoga pants that had seen better days. But she wasn't preparing for a Zoom meeting or a jog. She was preparing to face the day the same way she had for the past 5 years, quietly, purposefully, and under the radar. Around her, the apartment was cozy but plain. One bookshelf stacked with tech manuals and classic novels. A second-hand dining table with only 2 chairs. A couch that sagged slightly in the middle from years of use covered with a hand-knit throw her grandmother made before passing away. Private, not a contact, not spam, just unknown. She stared at it for a second, then answered, "Hello." There was a pause, then a voice that could cut glass. "Hello, Sophia. This is Victoria Blackwood." Sophia's stomach tightened instantly. Victoria, the woman whose approval she had spent 2 years silently trying to earn and failing. The mother of Ethan Blackwood, Sophia's fiancé. The woman who had once looked her dead in the eye and said, "Northwestern, that's very practical." "I hope I'm not interrupting," Victoria continued smoothly. "I thought it might be nice to have a little chat, just the two of us. Perhaps over tea, say 3 o'clock this afternoon." Sophia blinked. In 2 years, Victoria had never called her directly, never invited her over, never once suggested anything resembling connection. "Sure," Sophia replied, keeping her voice neutral. "Where shall I meet you? At the estate, of course," Victoria said. "It'll be just us. Think of it as a special moment, mother-in-law to be, daughter-in-law to be." Sophia tried to smile, though her insides had already gone cold. "I'll see you at 3. She ended the call slowly, carefully, like the phone might explode if she pressed the wrong button. Then she just stood there, staring at her reflection in the microwave door. Her face looked calm, but her chest felt like it was wrapped in barbed wire. Tea with Victoria Blackwood. 3 days before the wedding, something wasn't right. Not at all. Sophia stared at the phone for a long time after the call ended. The kitchen, once warm with morning calm, now felt cold, quiet, like the silence before a storm. She turned off the burner beneath her oatmeal. Appetite gone. Tea with Victoria Blackwood. It didn't feel like an invitation. It felt like a setup. She walked to the living room and sank onto the sagging sofa, pulling the knit blanket over her lap like armor. Her eyes landed on the small photo frame sitting on the end table. It was old, worn from years of dusting, but the image inside still looked sharp. Sophia at 15, sitting on the back porch of a cottage in Wisconsin, her head resting on the shoulder of a tall, silver-haired man with twinkling eyes and a wide, gentle smile. George Whitaker, her grandfather, her hero, her compass. She hadn't thought about him this much in months, maybe even years. But now something about the way Victoria's voice had curled around her name like she already owned her made Sophia ache for the one man who had never once tried to control her. George had never cared about image or legacy or bloodline. He had cared about kindness. He used to say the true measure of a person isn't what they build with money, it's what they build when they think no one's watching. He'd grown up in the Depression, worked his way from steel mill apprentice to real estate investor. Lived simply even when he didn't have to. Always wore the same 3 tweed jackets, tipped waitresses with $20 bills, volunteered at the public library every Thursday without fail. When he died during her senior year at Northwestern, she had felt like the ground had dropped out from beneath her. She remembered the lawyer's office, the smell of paper and polish, the way the man in a brown tie opened a manila folder and said, "Miss Williams, your grandfather left you everything." She had blinked. Everything, he nodded. All of it. She had expected a few savings bonds, maybe the cottage in Wisconsin. Maybe. What she got instead was $7 million, mostly in stocks, index funds, real estate assets across 3 states. Sophia nearly fainted in that chair. It didn't make sense. He had lived like a librarian, quiet, simple, wore shoes with worn-out soles. But he had been investing since 1962, carefully, relentlessly. And now every dollar he had made, he left to her. No strings, no speeches. Just a handwritten letter on thick yellow stationery. "Sophie girl, this world will try to define you by where you came from. Don't let it. You build your own worth. You fight smart. You love big. And you never ever sell yourself short. Love always, Grandpa George." She had clutched that letter like it was oxygen. like it was armor, like it was prophecy. And she had listened. She used a tiny fraction of the inheritance to fund her dream, a software company that made educational tools for public schools. EduTech Solutions. The rest she let it grow. Sophia Williams became a millionaire before her 25th birthday, but still she lived like a schoolteacher because she knew sooner or later she would meet people like the Blackwoods, people who only valued money when it came with a name. What they didn't know was that her name, Sophia Williams, had already earned every cent she had. And she didn't owe them a damn thing. While her classmates from Northwestern chased Silicon Valley dreams, Sophia stayed in Chicago. Not because she couldn't go, she had offers. Microsoft, Google, startups with rooftop kombucha and nap pods. But she wasn't interested in being someone else's cog. She wanted to build something of her own, something that actually mattered. That fall, fueled by her grandfather's memory and a silent fire in her chest, she founded EduTech Solutions from her kitchen table. No investors, no PR launch. Just her, a whiteboard, a second-hand laptop, and a vision. She wanted to fix what no one seemed to care about: the learning gap in public schools. While everyone else in tech was trying to teach robots to flirt or design apps to tell you what kind of bread you are, Sophia was designing software to help struggling kids catch up in math and reading. She didn't want headlines. She wanted change, and quietly she got it. Within 2 years, EduTech Solutions was in over 500 schools. By year 3, a statewide contract brought in her first $1 million in revenue. But no one knew. Sophia never told her friends, never told Ethan. Not because she was hiding, because she was watching. Watching how people treated her when they thought she was just a schoolgirl with a passion project. Watching who leaned in with curiosity and who condescended with that, "Oh, that's cute" smile. Ethan, to his credit, had never once asked how much she made. He loved her for her mind, her drive, her stubborn refusal to accept lazy thinking. He didn't seem to care whether her company made a dollar or a difference, which was why she started to fall in love with him. But his family. They noticed everything and understood nothing. When she met them for the first time at a formal dinner, Victoria's eyes had swept over Sophia's simple pearl earrings and Target blazer like they were rags. But it wasn't until Richard walked her out to the driveway that Sophia felt the first real blow. He paused, looking at her 2015 Audi parked beside his polished Mercedes. Then chuckled. "It's refreshing, Sophia," he said with a smirk, "to see a young woman who's not ashamed to drive. Humble machinery, that smile, the tone, like he was giving her a gold star for knowing her place." She smiled back, tight, silent, but inside she made a silent promise. "You think this is all I am? One day you're going to choke on that smirk." She didn't want to go to the gala. Sophia had spent the entire day on back-to-back Zoom calls, fixing a bug in the EduTech dashboard and trying to explain to a school superintendent why the math module wasn't loading on iPads running iOS 12.4. She was exhausted. The gala was for a nonprofit supporting after-school programs for underfunded districts. Her company had donated a license package which earned her 2 free tickets and a little plaque on the program booklet. She had every intention of skipping it. But Jenna, her best friend, wasn't having it. "You're going," Jenna declared, waving a borrowed dress like a weapon. "And you're going to wear this. And you're going to smile and pretend like you don't spend your Saturday nights debugging software in sweatpants." And so she went. The ballroom at the Grand Pearl Hotel was a chandelier fantasy gold crystal, white marble floors that clicked with every stiletto heel. Men in tuxedos, women in gowns that shimmered, waiters moving like dancers with trays of champagne. Sophia felt like she'd walked onto the set of someone else's movie. She stood near the back, clutching a glass of sparkling water and trying to look busy reading the event booklet when she heard a voice next to her. "Let me guess," the voice said, warm and amused. "You're either a donor who hates small talk or someone who accidentally walked into the wrong ballroom and is too polite to leave." She looked up. He was tall, over 6 feet, with slightly messy dark hair, warm brown eyes, and the kind of smile that made people feel seen, not examined. Neither Sophia replied. "I'm the tech nerd whose company donated software, and I don't hate small talk. I just hate bad small talk." The man laughed, genuine surprised. "I'm Ethan," he said, offering his hand. "Guilty of both bad small talk and attending way too many of these things." That was their beginning. He wasn't like the others, those old money sons who talked like they'd memorized Forbes articles instead of life. Ethan asked questions, real ones, about her work, her values, her vision. They didn't talk about brands or vacation homes or trust funds. They talked about education inequality, charter school policies, their favorite hiking trails. She told him about her grandmother's chili recipe. He told her about his dog that once swallowed a USB drive. For 2 hours, they didn't leave each other's side. No games, no performance, just connection. At the end of the night, he asked if he could call her. Not text, call. And when he did the next morning, he remembered everything. What she wore, what she said, how she laughed when he accidentally spilled sparkling water down his tuxedo sleeve. Sophia had gone to that gala expecting nothing but awkward conversation and a headache. She left with a name, a number, and a spark that would change everything. Sophia had met intimidating people before venture capitalist district superintendents, even one furious teacher who claimed her software gave him a hernia, but nothing compared to walking into the Blackwood estate. It wasn't just the size of the house, though. It was massive, with columns like something out of Greek mythology and floors that looked too clean to step on. It was the energy, the kind that made you feel like you were already under a microscope the second you walked in. Ethan had warned her. They can be intense, he said, smoothing his collar as they approached the gate. She thought he meant protective. He didn't. They were polite at first. Victoria Blackwood greeted her with an air kiss so distant it felt like a threat. Richard Blackwood shook her hand like she was a client whose contract he was about to tear apart. Dinner was served by staff. Not one dish was placed on the table by a family member. The napkins were pressed. The wine was older than Sophia's company. The silence between courses palpable. It started subtly. "Oh, Sophia, Ethan says you're in education. How noble. Tell us about your little software. Is it one of those apps kids download? You went to Northwestern, right? That's cute. Not Ivy, but still respectable." Each comment wore a mask, polished smiling, but their eyes gave them away. Sophia wasn't a guest. She was a specimen. And Victoria, she was the lead examiner. Her tone was soft, but every word hit like a jab. "So you grew up in Chicago proper? Not the suburbs that must have been colorful. Your parents are teachers. Both of them, how grounded. How interesting that you've managed to build a business. All on your own," she didn't say, without help. She didn't have to. The implication was baked into every compliment. "You are not one of us, you'll never be." Ethan noticed he squeezed her hand under the table, but he didn't speak up. Not yet. Sophia kept her composure, smiled, answered every question with grace. But inside, the cracks were forming. Because no matter how polite their voices, every word was cutting her down, not for who she was, but for who she wasn't. And when dessert arrived, a delicate creme brulee served on plates rimmed in gold, Victoria leaned in with one final dagger. "I admire how unpretentious you are, Sophia. Truly, driving that sweet little Audi, so refreshingly humble." She smiled like she meant it. "Sophia." She smiled back and burned the taste of that moment into memory because one day she knew it would return to the table. Only next time she'd be the one serving it. At first, Sophia told herself it was just nerves. That awkward pause when she mentioned her parents were public school teachers, normal. The way Victoria's lips twitched every time Sophia brought up her software company. Probably coincidence in the dinners, the fundraisers, the luncheons. Surely they were just being careful, proper, old money formal. She gave them the benefit of the doubt. She always did. Even when Richard referred to her work as that educational side hustle. Even when Victoria introduced her at a gala as Ethan's ambitious little friend. Even when she overheard one of Ethan's cousins whisper behind a champagne flute, "At least she's pretty. That'll distract from the Ursum." She smiled through all of it because she loved Ethan, and Ethan loved her. And love meant patience. Love meant letting time fix things. Didn't it? She watched them raise toasts that excluded her, laughed at jokes she wasn't meant to understand, accepted that her ideas, when echoed by someone with the last name Blackwood, suddenly became brilliant. But worst of all, she started to believe them. Not out loud, not consciously. But in the quiet corners of her mind, the whispers crept in. Maybe you are too different. Maybe you do belong in the background. Maybe silence is safer. So she adjusted, spoke less, smiled more, chose outfits that wouldn't stand out, avoided speaking about her company unless asked, pretended not to notice when Victoria looked her up and down like inspecting a handbag on clearance. She kept telling herself, "It'll get better. Once they know me. Once they see who I really am." But some people, they don't want to see. And 3 weeks before the wedding, during a casual brunch at the Blackwood home, Sophia brought along something special, her wedding dress. She had designed it herself, simple, timeless, minimalist silk, a lined silhouette, no diamonds, no glitter, no train that needed 6 bridesmaids to carry. Just elegance, just her. She unzipped the garment bag with a quiet pride, expecting something. A smile, a nod, a small gasp. Instead, Victoria stared. Not at the dress, through it. Her eyes were glass, her voice chillingly sweet. "Oh, how very efficient. I suppose it's economical." Then silence. A silence louder than any insult. Sophia zipped the bag shut. That night she stood alone in her apartment, the dress hanging on her closet door. She touched the fabric's soft real chosen with love and whispered to herself, maybe they'll come around, maybe one day. But deep inside, a voice had already begun to whisper something different. Or maybe they never will. The phone rang at 9:03 a.m. Sophia was still in her pajamas, barefoot, sipping her usual Earl Grey on the balcony of her modest apartment. Chicago's breeze swept through her hair as her phone vibrated once, twice, then stopped. Victoria Blackwood. She froze. It wasn't a number she expected. It wasn't a voice she heard often. Sophia stared at the screen, then called back. Victoria answered, after just one ring, her tone sweet as honey stirred with a silver spoon. "Sophia, darling, I hope I didn't wake you. I was just thinking, with the wedding so near, it would be lovely if you joined me for tea. Just us girls, something simple." Tea, just them. Sophia blinked. Victoria had never invited her alone, not once. Every encounter had been formal, strategic, flanked by other family members like soldiers guarding a throne. But now tea, intimate, casual, almost maternal. For a moment, Sophia's heart lifted. Maybe this is it. Maybe she's finally coming around. Maybe she sees me. She smiled through the phone. "Of course, Mrs. Blackwood. That sounds lovely. Wonderful. I'll have the table set on the veranda. See you at 2, Sophia agreed. Hung up, stared at her tea, then raced to her closet to pick out a dress that said, "I belong." The Blackwood estate looked like a painting, manicured hedges, roses in full bloom, the faint trickle of a marble fountain. But something felt wrong. As Sophia stepped out of the car, her heels clicked sharply on the stone pathway. A maid opened the grand doors. Inside, everything was perfectly placed, too perfect, like a showroom instead of a home. Victoria sat at the veranda table, dressed in navy silk porcelain teacups glinting in front of her, and beside her, Richard Blackwood. Sophia blinked. The invitation was supposed to be just us girls. Sophia Victoria smiled, rising to kiss the air near her cheek. "You look radiant." Sophia returned the greeting, though unease coiled in her chest like smoke. They sat. No small talk, no tea poured, no warm pastries, no sugar cubes, just silence, tension. Then Richard cleared his throat. "We won't take much of your time. We know the wedding is close. That's why we wanted to handle this now cleanly." He reached into a leather folio, pulled out a set of documents, and placed them directly in front of her. Prenuptial agreement. 2 words, sharp as a slap. Sophia blinked. I wasn't aware we were discussing." Victoria cut her off, voice still pleasant, but now clipped like a knife through glass. "Darling, this is standard procedure in families like ours. It's not personal, it's just necessary." Sophia looked down at the papers. Clause after clause, line after line. If Ethan and Sophia divorced for any reason, she would walk away with nothing. No share of assets, no rights to future earnings, no claims on intellectual property. Even her own company could be subject to arbitration. Her hands trembled. Did Ethan see this silence? Then Victoria's answer, smooth and devastating. "He knows. He thought it best to let us handle it, privately." Sophia's stomach dropped. Ethan knew. He knew. And if I don't sign, Richard didn't flinch. His voice was calm, cold. "Then there will be no wedding. That would be regrettable." The sun was still shining. Birds still chirped. The fountain still flowed. But inside Sophia, a war began. Sophia drove. She didn't remember getting into the car. Didn't remember thanking Victoria. Didn't remember how she smiled and nodded like everything was fine, like she hadn't just been gutted with legal ink. All she knew was her hands were trembling on the steering wheel. Her chest felt hollow, her cheeks wet. She blinked, again, but the tears wouldn't stop. He knew. That one thought spun in her mind like a broken record. He knew, and he said nothing. 2 years of laughter, slow dancing in the kitchen, holding hands on snowy walks, sharing dreams on rooftops. 2 years of I've got you, and we're a team, and nothing will ever come between us. Now it all felt scripted, like she'd fallen in love with a beautiful lie. She pulled into a gas station parking lot, didn't even need gas. She just needed to breathe. Her reflection stared back at her in the rearview mirror, eyes red, mascara smudged, mouth slightly open in disbelief. She looked like a woman who just found out her fiancé had sold her soul before the wedding cake had even been ordered. She had told herself it was just Victoria, just Richard, that Ethan was different. But now if he could let them ambush her like that, what else would he let them do? Her phone buzzed. Ethan. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Not now. Not until she could look him in the eyes and not see the contract, the betrayal, the silence. Back at the estate, Victoria sipped her tea without a wrinkle in her expression. Richard folded the contract neatly back into the folder. Shell sign, he said calmly. Where else would she find a match like Ethan? The apartment was quiet when Sophia returned. Too quiet. She dropped her purse on the couch and stood in the middle of the living room, frozen. The tears had dried, but the pain, still there, dull, heavy, like something stuck behind her ribs. She walked to the kitchen, opened the cupboard, and pulled out the emergency wine. Poured herself a glass, then sat on the floor back against the fridge, knees pulled to her chest. Her phone buzzed again. Ethan. She didn't answer. Instead, she scrolled to the only person she knew would understand. Jenna Whitmore, her best friend since college. The only person besides her lawyer who knew that Sophia wasn't some broke girl in a rundown apartment, but a self-made millionaire with a secret. She hit call. Sophie Jenna's voice was instant, warm, alive. You okay? You never call this late. Sophia's voice cracked. They ambushed me, Jen. A prenup. Cold. Ruthless. Ethan knew. There was silence on the other end. Then a low, dangerous growl. Those rich snakes. What did I tell you about that vulture mom of his? Sophia laughed, just a tiny broken sound, but it was enough to push her upright. Jenna didn't offer pity. She offered fury, logic, strength. So what now, Jenna asked sharp. You just gonna cry on the kitchen floor forever? Or are we gonna remind them who the hell you are? Sophia stood. Eyes clearer, back straighter. I'm calling Harold. The next morning, Sophia wore black. Not because she was mourning a relationship, but because something inside her had been buried the night before, and something else had been born. She walked into Harold Granger's private office at 9:00 a.m. sharp. He was already seated, immaculate three-piece suit, glasses low on his nose, 2 fountain pens lined up like surgical tools. Miss Williams, he greeted, standing. Let's bury some fools, shall we? Sophia exhaled a shaky laugh. Let's. She opened her laptop and turned the screen to him. 9N07842116, not a hypothetical, not future projections, actual, verified, liquid. Harold's eyebrow rose, not out of surprise, but satisfaction. So the little dove's been flying higher than she let on. Sophia smiled. Let's give them a reason to look up. For the first time in years, she wasn't hiding. No more tests. No more watching who loved her for who she was. Now she knew, and now she was choosing herself. Together, she and Harold spent hours crafting a brand new prenup, one that was clean, fair, and surgically precise. Sophia's company and intellectual property untouchable. Any inheritance, premarital asset, or equity stake fully retained. If either party sought divorce without cause, the initiator owed compensation. And finally, a clause that required joint approval on all business-related decisions affecting family holdings. No more silence, no more power plays behind her back. By noon, the contract was done. Harold leaned back, satisfied. They won't like it. Sophia closed the folder gently. They don't have to like it. They just have to know this is the only version he'll ever sign. Sophia waited at the cafe. No makeup, no smile. Only a manila folder on the table and a look in her eyes Ethan had never seen before. He arrived late, slightly breathless, nervous, still wearing the family crest on his cufflinks. Sophia, please, just let me explain. She raised her hand. One question, Ethan. Don't lie, don't deflect, just answer. He nodded, visibly shaken. Are you with me or with your family? The air changed. Just like that. No pretense, no romance, just truth. Ethan hesitated. His lips parted, then shut. Then in with you. I was scared. I thought my parents would come around on their own. I didn't think they'd pull something this disgusting. Sophia didn't blink, and yet you let them. You watched me walk into that ambush blind. I know, he whispered. I know, but I'm done being silent. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. I want to fix this with you. She studied him for a long moment, then slid the manila folder toward him. Here's the new agreement. Fair. Legal, no games. You read it, and you decide what kind of man you want to be. Ethan opened the folder, read silently, his jaw clenched, then relaxed. It's brilliant, he said. I know, she replied. Harold helped. He looked up. You planned this? No, but I won't let anyone write my story for me ever again. That night, as the city lights flickered outside her apartment window, Sophia packed the final version of the contract into a leather folder. She laid out her clothes. Not a dress, not soft pastels, a gray power suit, crisp, tailored, commanding. She looked at herself in the mirror. For the first time, she saw not the girl who tried to fit in, but the woman who was ready to take over. The next morning, Sophia stepped out of the elevator folder in hand heels, clicking like a metronome of war. The receptionist looked up. Can I help you, Mom? Sophia smiled, cool sharp. I'm here for the Blackwoods. The restaurant was the kind with live piano and chandeliers heavy enough to break ceilings. Sophia arrived on time. Of course she did. She sat at a private corner table, white linen, polished silver, a bottle of vintage Bordeaux already sweating in its cradle. She wore her gray suit again, this time with a pearl pin, sharp lines, clear eyes. She was not there to play nice. She was there for war, and they were late. 10 minutes, 15, 23, classic power play, keep her waiting, assert dominance, remind her who owns the clock. But Sophia didn't check her watch. She let the silence sit with her like an old friend. When Richard and Victoria finally arrived him in tailored navy, her in a fox-trim coat, they didn't apologize. They didn't smile. They simply took their seats like royalty deigning to dine with a maid. Sophia Victoria greeted her voice honeyed with subtle venom. We hope you haven't been waiting long. Not at all, Sophia replied evenly, pouring herself a glass. I enjoy silence. It tells you who people really are. That landed. Richard cleared his throat. Let's get to the point. You wanted this meeting? Sophia nodded. Yes. I believe there's a misunderstanding we should clear. She opened her folder, placed 2 pristine copies of the new prenup on the table. This is the agreement I will sign. It reflects fairness, mutual respect, transparency. Victoria's eyes narrowed. You came to renegotiate. Sophia smiled faintly. No, I came to inform you of the terms. A beat of stunned silence. Then Richard leaned forward. You don't get to dictate terms in this family. Sophia's hand slid another document across the table. I own 92% of my company. Net worth $9.07 million. Here are the audited statements if you'd like to verify. Victoria's hand froze mid-reach for her wine. That's impossible. It's reality, Sophia said, finally locking eyes with her. I chose not to flaunt it, but don't mistake humility for weakness. Sophia didn't flinch. She simply unfolded the second sheet. Bold, crisp, centered on the page in black ink. Net worth, 99, 4 Form 482, audited, verified, secured. Victoria blinked. Once. Then again, this time harder, as if her eyes had deceived her. Richard leaned forward. This is a joke, right? Sophia tilted her head. Calm, composed. If it is, the IRS is laughing too. That's last quarter's audit. She slid the page toward them. Behind it, the revised prenuptial agreement, 8 pages long, written in crisp legalese, each clause a silent rebuke to their original insult. This agreement protects both parties, yours and mine. If Ethan and I separate, assets remain independent. Intellectual property remains mine. There is no forfeiture. There is no claim to be made by either side. Richard picked it up, skimming fast, his brows furrowed. This is actually well written. Harold drafted it. He worked with my grandfather for 18 years. Maybe you've heard of Harold Mendez? Richard's eyes darted up. Of course he knew Harold. Victoria stayed quiet. Too quiet. Then she did something rare. She laughed. But it wasn't joy. It was disbelief. Cold, shaky. So, all this time, you let us believe you were... Poor Sophia leaned forward. No, I let you show me who you are when you think someone's beneath you. Victoria froze. You lied to us. No, Sophia snapped, voice sharp for the first time. I protected myself from this, from the games, from people who think love is conditional. The silence that followed was loud. Then Ethan, sitting beside her all this time like a ghost in a storm, finally spoke. Mom, Dad, I knew she was successful. I didn't know how much, but it doesn't matter. You made this about money. She never did. Victoria looked at her son. A flicker of something crossed her face, shame or maybe fear. Sophia stood up. I'm not here to beg. I'm here because Ethan deserves better. I deserve better. If you can't accept this agreement, there won't be a wedding. She picked up her folder. Let me know by tomorrow. And with that, she walked out, heels clicking like punctuation marks of power. The silence was suffocating. Not because no one spoke, but because everyone was thinking the same thing. We underestimated her. Sophia remained standing tall and still, like the final piece on a chessboard that refused to be taken. Victoria was the first to break eye contact. She looked down, then away, her fingers trembling ever so slightly as they toyed with the napkin on her lap. Richard, to his credit, didn't look away. He leaned back slowly in his chair, exhaled, then turned to Ethan. Son, is this really the woman you want to spend your life with? Ethan didn't blink. Yes, Dad, 100%. And if you can't respect her, then maybe you don't respect me either. Victoria flinched. Richard sat quietly for a beat. Then with a low chuckle, he reached for the contract again. Well, damn, you drive a harder bargain than most lawyers I've mentored. Sophia offered nothing in return. Just silence, measured, watchful. He scanned the pages one last time, then held out his hand. You've proven yourself a formidable negotiator. Sophia looked at the hand, and she took it, but she didn't smile. Because respect shouldn't be a reward. It should have been the starting point. Beside her, Ethan reached for her hand too, gently, openly, like a partner, like an equal. Victoria sat stiff, eyes hard to read, lips pinched. But she didn't speak, which in a way said everything. The morning sunlight cut through the curtains like soft gold. Sophia stood in front of the mirror, not adjusting her veil, not checking her lipstick, just looking at herself. The silk gown hugged her figure, elegantly minimalist as always. No diamonds, no glittering corset. Just grace, poise, strength. She looked unshakable. Until the knock on the door, it wasn't Ethan, it was her. Victoria Blackwood. Sophia froze, hands still midair, adjusting the fabric on her waist. Victoria stepped in silent, dressed in pale gray, regal as ever, eyes unreadable. She held out a small velvet box. These have been in our family for 5 generations. Sophia didn't move. They were worn by my grandmother on her wedding day, and my mother, and then me. A pause. And if you'll accept them, they're yours now. Sophia looked at the box, opened it. 2 pearl drop earrings, antique, timeless, understated elegance just like her dress. She blinked, then looked up. Why now? Victoria didn't smile, but she softened. Because this morning I stopped seeing you as someone marrying into our family and started seeing you as someone I'd be proud to say is part of it. There was no hug, no tears, just the kind of silence that repairs more than it hurts. Sophia nodded. Not to say yes, but to say, I see you too. She put on the earrings, and for the first time that morning, she smiled. Sophia sat by the vanity, adjusting the antique earrings gently. Their weight wasn't heavy, but the meaning behind them was. Behind her, Victoria lingered. Awkward, still regal, but more human now. Sophia broke the silence. I didn't expect you to come this morning. Victoria stepped closer. Neither did I. Another pause. But there's something I should have told you long before today. Sophia turned curious. Victoria sat on the edge of the chaise lounge like a woman unbuckling old armor. My grandmother Isabel, she wasn't born into wealth. She was a seamstress's daughter. Grew up in a tenement apartment with 6 siblings. No silver spoons, just calloused hands and sewing needles. Sophia blinked, but she married into the Blackwood family. Victoria nodded, eyes distant. They hated her at first, called her a gold digger, an outsider. My great-grandfather's sisters didn't speak to her for a decade. She took a breath, but she built trust, quietly, firmly, with dignity. And eventually they saw her worth. Sophia's voice was soft. Why didn't you tell me this before? Victoria looked at her now, not just as a daughter-in-law, but as a reflection of something long buried. Because I forgot. Or maybe I chose to. I buried that story so deep to fit the role I thought I had to play. She stood up. But today, seeing you strong, unwavering, I remembered Isabel. And I realized I owe you more than just a pair of earrings. Victoria hesitated. I judged you, harshly, unfairly, out of fear. And for that, I am sorry. Sophia didn't speak at first. She just reached for the earrings once more, then met Victoria's eyes. Maybe we both come from stronger women than the world expected. The cathedral was drenched in soft light. Not extravagant, not gaudy, just warm. Rows of lilies framed the aisle. A string quartet played something gentle in the background. The kind of music that didn't scream for attention but lingered in your chest. And then she appeared. Sophia. Her gown caught the light like silk moonlight. Hair pinned simply. No tiara. No overdone sparkle. Just the earrings. And a walk that didn't tremble. As she walked down the aisle, eyes followed her, but not in judgment this time. There was respect. Not because she was Ethan's bride, but because she was Sophia. At the altar, Ethan turned. His breath caught the moment he saw her. He looked like every man about to marry the love of his life, except he knew this time he was marrying someone whose strength could match his own. The ceremony was short, but the vows weren't. Ethan spoke first. His voice cracked on the second sentence. Sophia, you taught me that love doesn't mean staying silent. It means standing up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. He reached for her hand. I failed once. I will not fail again. Then came her turn. Sophia didn't blink. Her voice didn't shake. Ethan, I never wanted perfection. I only ever wanted truth. And today, more than ever, I believe we're choosing each other with open eyes. There were tears from guests, from the bride, even from the father of the groom. And when the officiant finally said, "You may now kiss the bride," there was no hesitation. They stood there, two equals, hand in hand, kissed not like royalty, but like survivors, like partners. And as they turned to face the crowd, Sophia whispered to herself, too quiet for anyone else to hear, "This time I didn't marry into power. I walked in as an equal. The newlyweds didn't move into the Blackwood estate. They could have." Richard had offered one of the family's sprawling properties on the Gold Coast. Victoria surprisingly hadn't objected, but Sophia declined. She and Ethan chose a townhouse in West Loop. Brick walls, rooftop garden, a space filled with light and peace, not portraits and shadows. They painted the walls themselves, picked out furniture on weekends, laughed over terrible wallpaper samples, and spilled takeout on the first night. There was no staff, just music, laughter, and a sense of finally starting from their own beginning. Sophia didn't just build a marriage. She was building a dynasty, but not the kind measured in mansions or legacy surnames. It started small. One morning she received an unexpected email. Victoria Blackwood would like to schedule a meeting regarding Blackwood and Langley's digital transformation project. Sophia stared at it for a long moment. Not a dinner invitation, not a charity gala, not even a passive-aggressive tea request. A business inquiry. That afternoon at the Blackwood firm's glass tower downtown, she stepped into a boardroom. Victoria was already seated with Richard and two senior partners. No smug looks this time. No fake smiles, just a quiet, respectful nod. "We'd like you to serve as an executive tech advisor on the upcoming modernization initiative," Richard said. "Your startup success speaks for itself." Sophia leaned back slightly. No one here was doing her a favor. They were acknowledging her value. "Let's talk strategy," she said with the kind of calm that made even senior partners sit straighter. And as the meeting began, she caught Victoria watching her almost proudly. It wasn't about joining the Blackwood dynasty anymore. Sophia was building one of her own. It happened over coffee in the Blackwood's private library. Victoria sat across from Sophia, a delicate china cup in hand, steam curling toward the shelves of leather-bound law books. "You and Ethan must join us for Sunday dinners," she said. "It's tradition, every week." Sophia set her own cup down gently. She didn't flinch, didn't rush to please. "Not anymore. I'd love to," Sophia began, her voice warm but steady, "but I'd like us to start with once a month. That way we'll truly enjoy the time together, rather than just showing up out of obligation." A flicker passed through Victoria's eyes, surprise, perhaps even curiosity. The old Sophia might have folded instantly, nodding with a smile, while burying her resentment later. Not this Sophia. Victoria tapped her cup twice as if weighing the request. Then with an almost imperceptible nod, she said, "Once a month then." "But you're bringing dessert," Sophia smiled. Boundaries weren't walls. They were doors she chose when and how to open. The camera was on. Sophia sat in her home office, sunlight streaming in through the tall windows, a steaming mug beside her. This wasn't a boardroom, not a family dinner, not a wedding speech. It was just her and the people who had been following her journey. "I used to think strength meant keeping the peace," she began. "Agreeing to things I didn't want because I didn't want to be labeled difficult. Her voice didn't waver. She leaned forward as if speaking directly to the heart of the viewer. But real strength? It's saying no when people treat you like you're lucky just to be in the room. It's knowing you belong there and not letting anyone shrink you to fit their comfort. Sophia smiled, not the polite smile she'd worn at those early Blackwood dinners, but a smile of someone who had earned her space. The most powerful thing you can do, she said, pausing just long enough for the words to settle, is simply refuse to be less than who you truly are. Fade out. In life, people will try to measure your worth with their own yardstick, built from their fears, their prejudices, or their narrow view of the world. The truth only you get to decide your value. Sophia's story is a reminder that confidence isn't about shouting your worth from the rooftops. It's about knowing it so deeply that no one's doubt can shake you. Boundaries are not walls. They are the lines that protect your peace, your dignity, and your future. Never let someone's limited vision shrink your potential. Stand tall even if your voice trembles. If Sophia's journey inspired you, imagine how many more stories like hers are waiting to be told. Click subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next powerful story. Your next life-changing lesson might be just one video away.